For session 2 was asked that if you could present the first session. Then we are going to have a coffee break, and that will be combined with the poster presentations, or just a poster session. And then we are going to have session 2 after the coffee break. So altogether we are looking forward to 12 presentations. My name is TIයෙන් U BAN. I am a professor at the Central European University in Budapest, and I'm also the vice chair of Working Group 3 on mitigation in the intergovernmental climate change. Unfortunately, Professor is not yet here, but he asked me to start the session, and he is going to join us in a couple of minutes, so don't worry, he will be here with me very soon. We are also very fortunate today to have two secretaries, and they are Van Tra from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment. And we also have today Akiko Kotera from the Vietnam Japan University from Vienna. Thank you very much for your hard work on these sessions. So, without further ado, I think we should get started. And because we have such a packed session, it will be really good to have time for the discussion. I would like to ask each presenter to really respect the time. And I will ask you to stand there and keep your talk from there. And you will see, please keep looking at me, because you will get these signs from me. And when I ask you to stop, please do conclude, so that we do give appropriate time for each of the presenters. Okay? So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our first presenter. Unfortunately, the first author couldn't be here, but we are privileged to have Mr. Tra, who is going to talk about the impact of climate change on sustainable development in Vietnam. Dr. Tra, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So first of all, I'm not supposed to present this slides. However, my superior, Professor Dr. Quỹ Giáo, who cannot be here today, she sends her finest regards and apologies to everyone who's in the session today. So let's talk about the impact of climate change on sustainable development in Vietnam. So we'll start off by asking the question, why climate change response? Because we are, in fact, in a climate change response session. So I have to go through these next two slides because what President Barack Obama said, 9 out of 10 scientists agrees that climate change is real and there's a need to do something about it. So I have to ask myself, what about the other remaining one? So I have to go to the next two slides just to make sure that everyone in this room agrees about what we're talking about. So, for the believers, this is what's happening in the past and will happen in the future. You'll have all these RCP scenarios from IPCC. The Earth is warming, the climate is changing, so there is a need to act. And for the 1% of the scientists who do not agree on climate change and there's a need to do something about it, I'll call them the deniers. And if you've heard about the Pascal's wager, let's talk about the Pascal wagers in terms of climate change. So we have whether climate change exists or climate change does not exist. And on the other hand, we have we do something about it or we do nothing about it. So let's first look about if climate change exists and we do something about it. Clearly, we could remain at 2 degrees warmer if we're lucky. Oh, it's still debatable. There's 1.5 degrees consensus as well. So we're going to have some costs in terms of mitigation, adaptation, but which will turn out to have been necessary. So on the other hand, if climate change doesn't exist, but we'll still do something about it, then there'll be no further change in temperature, of course, because climate change is not real. But we will incur some costs, mostly on doing things which would either way improve our resource outcomes anyway. So win-win. Now, if we do nothing and climate change exists, ooh, I got some bad news for you. 3, 4, 5 degrees and even rising. We're doomed. And if climate change doesn't exist, and we still don't do anything about it, we don't consider change in climate in temperature, of course, because it's not real. But we, on the other hand, we don't gain the resources from doing something. So then again, when we look at this matrix, or the Pascal's wager, we clearly see that we could easily agree that we should do something about climate change. And this is why we're all here on the climate change response session. Now, does this look familiar to you? Okay, maybe not. So, basically the idea is that we have development strategy as one of the echelons, mitigation strategies, and adaptation strategies. But the bigger question is, how do they link? What are the synergies between these development strategies, mitigation strategies, and adaptation strategies? And this is the question that we at the Vietnam Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology, and Climate Change seeks to answer. So, on the other hand, once we all have all this, what about sustainable development goals, which we all heard from Vice Minister Lê Công Thanh from our ministry yesterday, that it's out there too. So we also have to consider sustainable development goals within the context of the 3 echelons. So how do we go about doing this? At the Vietnam Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology, and Climate Change, we've established a 6-step towards obtaining the co-impacts between the 3. So basically, firstly, we review all climate change adaptations, but only limiting it in NDC, of course, mitigation, of course, because there are tremendous amount of mitigation measures and greenhouse gas emission and mitigation measures. So we cannot list all of them, so only limiting to within the NDC, the National Determined Contribution. Secondly, we identify co-impacts of adaptation and mitigation measures in NDC, so link between the 2 bottom echelons. Thirdly, we analyze the integrated benefits of climate change adaptation and greenhouse gas mitigation measures by the matrix filtering method. And fourthly, we develop indicators for assessment of co-benefits of climate change adaptation and greenhouse gas mitigations identified in the NDC of Vietnam. After we develop indicators, we apply these sets of indicators to assess the co-benefits of mitigation and adaptation measures within the NDC. And finally, we consolidate the results and rate the measures as very low, low, medium, high, and very high. So this is all dry words and text. Let's see how it looks in terms of a flow chart. So basically, we have adaptation measures and mitigation measures set out in the NDC. We also have established development strategies indicators, which includes climate co-benefits, economic co-benefits, social co-benefits, environmental co-benefits, and institutional and policy co-benefits. Now, linking the 2 through using an impact matrix by the Delphi method. So basically, we have expert reviews, weighing all of these inputs. We obtain the results, which are low, medium, high, and very high. And that is for adaptation, mitigation, and development. So the linkage between the 3. Now, in terms of the sustainable development goals, we also look back at the NDC of Vietnam, where we have 20 climate change response in the NDC. So these are mitigation and adaptation options. And we linked it with the 16 sustainable development goals, using the impact matrix and the Delphi method to determine whether the impact on the NDC and SDG is no impact, low impact, medium impact, high impact, or very high impact. And so the results, firstly, for the climate change adaptation and the development strategies, what you see here. I'm sorry I wasn't able to translate this before the presentation, but basically this means climate, economy, social, environment, and policy. So we see that within climate change adaptation development, basically it affects climate the most. In terms of climate change mitigation and development strategies, the highest connection is with climate again, second with policy and institutional. And putting that 2 information we've seen in the last 2 slides on one single chart, we can see that basically for mitigation and adaptation, there is some similarities in terms of the contribution to the 5 echelons. So basically we have institution, climate, economy, social, and environment. it's somehow similar. So there's a close connection, the synergies, co-impacts between climate change adaptation and climate change mitigation. And the synergies between climate change mitigation and adaptation link between the 5 different fields, the areas of climate change mitigations, namely energy, agriculture, waste, land use change, and industrial processes. We will see that there's a network of connections there. In terms of climate change adaptation and mitigation, you can see that for the 20 response that I mentioned earlier in the NDC, there are linkages between the two. And the second part about the Sustainable Development Goals is how the Sustainable Development Goals link how the adaptation and mitigation response in the NDC impacts the Sustainable Development Goals. Because we have 17, see that the highest one is 14.4 for 12. I can't remember exactly what that is. I remember 13 is take urgent actions to combat climate change. And so, in other words, what we at the Vietnam Institute of Meteorology, Hydrology, and Climate Change have done is we have assessed the impacts of climate change on the Sustainable Development Goals. We have assessed the contribution of the nationally determined contribution of Vietnam in achieving these goals. So these results provided a basis for the identification of the harmony and co-benefits between the different actions in climate change adaptation and climate change mitigation. This would assist us in the planning of investment policies, as well as help policymakers take advantage of the opportunities that climate change can bring. So that sums up my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention and indeed patience. Thank you.
But please do stay there because you were very diligent and you saved 5 minutes, and I do think that's an excellent chance to take questions or comments. Everyone deserves that who is save time. So, do we have any questions or comments to this very interesting and very dense presentation? Yes, please. Please also introduce yourself.
Thank you for your presentation. My name is Walter, coming from the Central Institute for Natural Resources and Environmental Studies, Vietnam National University. I think this presentation is very interesting. But I think that the good point is that you compare the implementation of the adaptation and so mitigation measure with the competition with the Sustainable Development Goals. The good point is in comparison. The question is how to measure. So you mentioned that use the techniques of action. But the question is how the reliable design and how this is what is the applicable method for the policy making process. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we could collect the other question, and I will have one as well, and we could ask our speaker to answer them together.
Hello, I'm Laura from the University of South Africa. And what I'm interested in, you've made these development indicators, that it's linked up to that question about measurements in terms of indicators. But I'm seeing that you're considering all these indicators as compatible. So for instance, you're saying economic development is compatible with environmental processes. But are you not foreseeing that possibly there could be incompatibilities, or you have to think carefully about how you would make some compatibility between these different indicators?
Thank you very much. I also have a question very similar to that you seem to be focusing on co-benefits and what now in this latest report, the IPCC referred to these mostly as synergies. That's the term we have been calling it different things. We call it synergies. On the other hand, we haven't really mentioned what our previous, what you have referred to as incompatibilities. We call them as trade-offs. So are to try to distinguish between positive and negative synergies, so trade-offs, and how are you dealing with these? That there are unfortunately sometimes compromises between these goals rather than reinforcing each other. So if there are no questions, can you please take this 3 and answer, and you have 3 minutes.
Why did I have 5 minutes free? Okay. So basically answering that, fine gentleman there about the methodology. So basically we applied a Delphi method. So basically we set out 4 rounds of questionnaires to, first of course we have to select the panel, so the experts based on their background, and then we sent 4 rounds of questionnaires, making them fill in this questionnaire to identify firstly the indicators, and then applying a weight to these indicators. It's a trade secret, no, I'm just kidding. We're more than happy to share it with you if we could meet outside this session anytime soon. You have my contact, I can share that. About this lady here from South Africa, yeah, that's a very interesting point that you mentioned, the incompatibility between the different indicators. Of course, we are at the very early beginning stage of trying to find the linkage, the synergies between the different aspects of climate change mitigation, adaptation, and surroundings, as well trying to bring in sustainable development goals. There are positive and negative synergies that we have to consider. This is also part of the ongoing process of research and what we're doing at our institute. So if I could have your contact after so we can kind of discuss a bit more, that'd be very helpful. I appreciate your question. Thank you very much.
And can you also answer the, well, it was very similar, but the trade-offs?
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that it's also a very interesting aspect that we haven't really considered yet to this very point, or I'm not fully aware of, but that's something that we have to take in mind, and we'll continue working on that very, very soon.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for your talk. Let's give it a So, our next speaker is Mr. Kim. And we are going down to the Maldives, and from a very general picture, we are now going to have a concrete case. We will look at the optimization analysis of independent grid energy systems in a Malahini resort in Maldives. Mr. Kim, or Dr. Kim, the floor is yours. And I will show you the cards, 5 minutes, 1 minute, and when you have to stop. Please start.
Good morning, I am Professor here from the Great School of Korea. As you know, small developed countries, they are very vulnerable to climate changes, and they heavily depend on the imported oil for the power generation. Also, the centralized generation of electricity is almost impossible because of the location constraint. And this makes the easier primary source of the electricity generation, and it puts the huge financial and also the environmental burden for these countries. Therefore, the introduction of the independent renewable systems can provide the chances to reduce their heavy reliance on the imported particulars. Also, it can help overcome the geographical constraint and also increase the electrification without the cost for the extension of the power. So, in the research, we search for the solutions for the SIS to diversify the source of the energy supply. in the research, we just consider various types of the energy systems and try to find the optimal renewable energy system in Bolivus or the SIS, and then we just analyze technical and also the economic feasibility of the systems. And also we investigate time frame for achieving these characters of the systems compared with the existing generation of power. So Bolivus is composed of more than 1,000 islands and located on tropical zone, and temperatures between the 23 Celsius and 31 Celsius. Main economic activity is tourism. And in fact, Maldives achieved 100% electrification based on off-grid generation. And also, it has established the ambitious target of the 100% renewables by the 2020, but currently the share of the renewables is only 1.2%. So we are going to use the technical tool, which is called hybrid optimization of the multiple renewables to examine the technical feasibility of the different energy systems, and we are going to simulate different system configurations and find the optimal system that satisfies the technical constraint at the lowest cost of the energy. To compare the efficiency of the different energy systems, we are going to use the concept of the levelized cost of energy, which is the unit cost of the power, electricity production. So defined as the lifetime cost divided by the total energy production. So we are going to use this concept to just compare different types of the energy technologies, and we compare the LCOEs. Three different systems identified by Khoa to be feasible, find whether the renewable system is feasible. So our project site is the Manahini Pudavandus resort in Maldives. In fact, this resort is the only source of demand for the electricity in this island, and it shows quite stable load pattern over the year because it is located on the tropical zone. In fact, the resort has 3 diesel generators. One diesel generator meets most of the load electricity, but if demand is more than 500 kilowatts, and second diesel generator is actually just operated manually. And the project of this solar PV and ESS was implemented to just eliminate this kind of the inconvenience of the turning on the second generator manually. So we are going to compare the 3 computing systems, energy systems. Our system is the existing energy system, and when you just composed of the diesel generator, capacity of the GR is the 648 kilowatts. And in the case of the second system, both the solar PV and diesel are operated simultaneously. And then solar system is composed with PV and then diesel, also the ESS batteries. And we use 2 batteries. One is the lithium-ion battery, and the second is the vanadium redox flow battery. And solar PV provide approximately 472,000 kilowatt-hour first year. This accounts for about 17% of the electricity generated from the entire system, and remaining electricity is produced by the diesel generator. We assume that the capacity of the PV degrade project years for 20 years. And for the ESS, is used to avoid the shortage of the capacity and then avoid the unmet load of the power and then reduce the excess capacity. Without energy storage system, about 80,000 kilowatt-hour of electricity is considered as the excess capacity that we use. And in addition to these kind of assumptions for the energy systems, various financial assumptions should be considered to launch the project of installing the PV, solar PV and ESS. And then and we also assume that capital is composed of the 70% of the debt and 30% of the equity. And then return on equity is 13.5%, and that will be repaid in initial 7 years with a 1 year grace period of the construction. And interest rate is 8.5%. Inflation rate is 2.2%, which is average inflation rate in renewables. Operational and maintenance cost is account for about 2% of the total system. And the diesel price is, this is average world price, it's $1.06 per liter. It nominally, it will increase over time, but the inflation rate is assumed to be same as the inflation rate. So therefore, real diesel price will remain the same. So this is the estimate LCOE, the life cost energy of the three systems. And for the system 2 and system 3, it starts with the high level of the LCOE because of the investment cost, also the debt should be just repaid in the first 7 years. For the system 3, of PV with the ESS, LCOE is greater than one another, but as the power generation increases, LCOE is high. And for the system 1, it's mainly depending on the diesel price, and it remains at the same level, about the 30% kilowatt-hour. And for the system 2, achieves the grid parity in about 5.5 years, and afterwards it declines, and then at the end of the project, LCOE is about 30 cents per kilowatt-hour. And for the system 3, it failed to achieve the parity because of the cost of the ESS and so on. So this topic is kind of the renewable system in the SIS can face the various uncertain circumstances, and then this kind of situation can increase the investment project cost and also can threaten the possibility of the project operation. Therefore, we just conducted the sensitivity analysis to just investigate how changes in discount rate and diesel price affect the production cost of electricity with different systems. So this is results of sensitivity analysis for the current discount rate. Our current discount rate is 7.8, and it increased to 10%. System 1, LCO just climbed slightly, for the system 2 and 3, it increased. Here, for discount rate increased, and the grid tariff can be just delayed about up to 6.3 years. Discount rate up to 12% is delayed to the 7 years. But in the case of system 3, because still the cost is very high, in any discount rate, it fails to achieve the grid tariff. Yeah, for the diesel price changes, we just consider 3 scenarios: 10% decrease, and then 10% increase, and 20% increase against the current level. For the system one, if just the diesel price decreased by 10%, because one system one depends on the diesel only, it will make the system one more just attractive, and then the grease penalty is deferred, and then it can be achieved in about 6.7 years. But if diesel price increase 10%, by 10% and 20%, then it will make this 10 trends more effective. And then grease penalty can be achieved in 5 years and also the 4.5 years respectively. But still, system 3 could not just achieve the grease penalty. So in this research, we just investigate whether renewable systems are feasible option for the small island developing countries based on the case of the region. It shows that system 3, only solar PV with DL can reach the parity, but with parity of PV with ESS can't be achieved within the time. Even with the 20% diesel price increase, couldn't just bring the parity for the system 3. So that means that it will take more time to eliminate the diesel generator from the system. Also, as this sensitivity generally indicates, if the global trend of the oil price increase continues, and then deploying this kind of renewable system can benefit the more users. Also, if in the future the cost of the ESS goes down, it can make the system 3 more attractive. Okay, thank you.
So well kept in time. So I'll just take the prerogative of the chair and give you a quick question on the sensitivity analysis for diesel price in this country, but you haven't done any sensitivity analysis for PV price and ESS price. Okay, I guess if you want to buy it right now, that's not very useful. On the other hand, it's still interesting, at least from an intellectual point of view. Do you have any sort of insights? What could have, because the price of these are actually dropping dramatically, both PV and ESS. So it's quite an interesting exercise to see what happens, or how much they have to be dropping in order to reach grid parity. Have you done any work on that?
We have finished, but we are going to just try in the future. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So let's give a big hand to our speaker. Thank you. And now we are moving from mitigation and resilient energy system response. We are going to climate change impact. And our third speaker is going to talk about mapping the dengue fever vulnerability in Vietnam and Philippines. And I would like to invite Dr. Gati Tan Phan to talk about the dengue fever.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Providing the slide on. It's quite known that the climate change has been affecting many aspects of our lives, in terms of the health disease. So my topic today is concerning the daily vulnerability to climate change in Vietnam and Philippines using the geospatial technology. I am Pham Thi from the Vietnam National Space Center. As you might know, that our center, Vietnam National Space Center, is become the chair of the CEOs. It's the Committee of Earth Observation. So this it is the effort of the CEOs also to promote the even the remote sensing data for the sustainable development, including with the climate change adaptation and response. So that is why we focus on this research in this topic. by the Asia Pacific Network for Global Researchers, which is also focused on climate change issue. So this is content of our talk. We will give you maybe some background and the data and methods and some reason, and finally the summary, and we'd like to introduce some kind of product sale. So you might access this kind of data later on. This is the background. So we know very well about how the climate and human affect on the mosquitoes, and also affect on the daily experience. That's why from the we focus with the environment, including temperature and precipitation affecting the invention habitat of the meta, and it's all of this affecting on the development, survival, and reproduction of meta. And meta transmit the virus, which make the transmission and replication, resulting on the daily prevalence and daily outbreak. So this is all kind of the correlation with the environment and human activity on the daily. But of course now we are focusing mostly on the environment, mainly the climate change. So from the global climate change, connected with the regional climate change, with different kind of seasonal cycle and local and microclimate, and also we have the global viral prevalence, which is also affecting with the human activity by preventing nature, adaptation strategy, or human activity itself. So under the influence of the climate, the number of organisms can be increased, and including with the population density and distribution. And outbreak of the disease. And this is give you a picture of the daily cases occur in Vietnam from 2000 to 2015. So we can see that the increasing kind of trend, especially in the southern part of Vietnam, or in mostly in the southern part is river river region. So this is a picture that we can see some here is increasing, especially 2010 and 2011, and also 2007 and 2009. And this year's 2 past this year's concerning is we have more high spot in the river delta region here with more. So we for Vietnam region we focus on this area, and so we apply also more on the Philippines, and we can see that's why we say that it's a kind of hotspot because of this variation, yearly variation of the dengue in Vietnam, but this line is show the number of the dengue over the vapor temperature. And this is we also have for Philippines here, plus we have the variation of dengue also in the seasonal variation together with climate parameter. And this is our technology. We adapted to the water index approach, like feet. This is the framework. The climate variation in temperature and rainfall, and here is the human environment, including land use and population density. All of these variation will be included in the exposure index, and other include in the susceptibility index is household and individual, including the age, the poverty, in terms of the resilience, we use campaign assess. So this will be included in considered to the susceptibility index. So in terms of vulnerability, we are making the weighting process of between the exposure and susceptibility. Here, with the human individual, we considering the age under 15 years. This is the source for the level and the data source, and making the percentage of the population and the health access, the density of capacity and poverty. The percentage of poverty now, so the index will be exercised by this formula. And other exposure index, including climate variation, temperature and rainfall. The temperature we use the most is land surface temperature, and the rate of the temperature will be like this. From 20 to 33, lightly increase exposure from 0 to 1. And also rainfall, we have the monthly rainfall from satellite index. This is the estimate for global satellite mapping of precipitation. And we also make the index of the local one with the monthly precipitation amount. And so exposure index by land cover and population density. So we have different kind of the index values from 0 to 1, depending on the type of the land cover and also depending on the density population. This is an example of the remote sensing data we have used here. This is the GSM data, rainfall we have here for example, and this is land surface temperature, and this is the land yield cover also for the remote sensing data. And this is our result. It's kind of example for you, the average monthly variation of vulnerability for Vietnam in metropolitan delta region and for Philippines, over Philippines. So clearly see this we have increasing of the vulnerability during the rainfall season in metropolitan delta, and also the same in the Philippines. But the pattern in the Philippines is seen more scattered. We have a lot of pictures, but limited time, so I will do the correlation analysis. So we can see that the picture of the correlation here for metropolitan region is more consistent with some higher reasonable correlation between vulnerability and dengue, and more variation in Philippines of the variation. So this is the picture from the data from 2014. But the validation for 2015 and for 2016 for mechanism we have for all province here. So it seems that the correlation with the trend of the correlation between the validity and dating the red zone with the data is the same. The trend for each province in this mechanism. So under the project, we have developed the web system. We can provide all the output here in this website, so we can access it later, or we can provide this kind of tool for the decision maker to support them in the management of the data. And some of our slide. So mapping over the way to data is still to be evidence. Utilize aerospace technology to support health in disease control and intervention by web system. And remote sensing data provide detailed information and climate and environment. For vulnerability mapping, such advantages over standard surface observation and mapping the most challenges assisting approach in mapping data is to improve accuracy in describing spatially localized data distribution. But we hope that the projection of the climate change also may be useful in mapping the risk. That means when we use the projection of the climate change from the model, we can hopefully use similar vulnerability mapping of the data so we can project for the future. Thank you very much for your.
I suggest that we keep the questions for the discussion because we are almost out of time. So thank you again. And with that, we are going to proceed to our next topic, which is we are going back to the sea, and we'll look at actually blue carbon. So the next speaker from the School of Environment and Natural Resource Sciences in the Faculty of Science and Technology in the University of Kewangan, Malaysia, Bằng in Malaysia, is going to talk about the context of seagrass blue carbon studies for mitigating climate change in the Indo-Pacific region. How far does it apply? So, Mohammed Raizini, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Diana. I'm asking this question because there has been a lot of interest over the past years on mitigating climate change through natural sequestration. My interest is in seagrasses, and I'm asking quite a lot of questions because a lot of controversies are also arising from the interest that's been generated so far. So I'm Rosani. My background is marine ecology with a slant towards biogeochemistry. And before I go into blue carbon and seagrasses per se, I just like to take this slide and show it to you. This is just a common slide that I took from one of the earlier IPCC reports. So this actually summarizes why carbon sequestration and carbon can be stored in terrestrial biomes or marine biomes. We employ the natural carbon cycle to store carbon in the habitat itself, whether in the biomass or whether in the habitats or rather the sediments of the habitats. So more and more the interest is garnered because we are looking for the cheapest, easiest natural method to sequester atmospheric carbon dioxide in habitats of primary producers, i.e. naturally mitigating climate change or sequestering carbon dioxide. And interest has been long in making, and for terrestrial systems, the report back there summarizes the contributions of green carbon to mitigate climate change. And the green carbon specifically stores carbon within the biomass and the detrital matter of plants on land. And for marine then, the marine side then, blue carbon has been coined about 9 years ago in 2009, culminating in this report. And basically, this highlights the role of three important coastal vegetated ecosystems, mangroves, seagrasses, and salt marshes. And of course, in our region, salt marshes are not really applicable because they are found in temperate regions. My interest is in seagrasses, as you have heard earlier, and mangroves I'll touch very little from now on. So basically, just a very quick introduction on what are seagrasses. Basically, as the name implies, they are grasses living in the sea. Okay, they are flowering plants. They bear fruits. They provide important ecosystem services such as habitats for fish, for invertebrates. Important commercial fishes can be found in these meadows, but we are more interested in the ecosystem service of carbon storage within this ecosystem. So this is a picture taken by my colleague from Australia. So you can see the living part on top of the sediment, living on top of the sediment, and this detrital matter gets buried in the habitat itself, and this can be stored for long periods of time. Okay, so a bit of an introduction again on what are the current directions of existing seagrass research into blue carbon storage. So one of the preemptive papers that led to this interest is that the seagrasses can contribute quite a huge amount of carbon within the bulk carbon pool of seagrass sediments. Globally, it has been estimated that of the bulk carbon, 50% of the organic carbon are seagrass derived. And please bear this number in mind because I will be referring to it again later. So, just after this paper was published, more and more papers are out, including this very important reference that primarily all seagrass blue carbon scientists refer to nowadays. So this summarizes the global level estimates of seagrass carbon in habitats. So from then on, my interest in this paper, in this area, stems from looking into long-term carbon storage from Australia. We looked at what are the factors providing the storage to occur. And in nearer to home, we looked at how this carbon can be lost from the habitats. And one of the things that we have shown is that we are a bit of in a conundrum because aperiodic climate change can result in the losses of existing stocks, and this is one of the papers that we published in from our site in Australia, where quite a huge amount of carbon has been lost because of heat waves. And the last paper that I wanted to highlight is the controversies. This is one of the starts of questions that ask why and how, or whether this geoengineering method is actually realistic or trustable. Okay, but the policy making, the interest is so great that policy is preempting the science. Okay, so more and more policy papers are out there, including from Malaysia, Madagascar, Indonesia, whereby it has been equated that mangroves and seagrasses are good carbon storage habitats, which in my opinion is not necessarily the case for seagrasses. So to actually compare, I start with this paper that I highlighted earlier, the one that all seagrass scientists refer to nowadays, is that these are points that contribute to blue carbon studies in seagrass meadows as of 2012. So these are important numbers, important ranges that had been put out there. Okay, so this is where I've been working on seagrasses for the past 5-8 years, and one of the things that I have seen is that there is a generalizable predictor of carbon seagrass stocks at the global level is still elusive. And I ask the question then, are there patterns for blue carbon in seagrass meadows within the Indo-Pacific bioregion, and does it have implications on policy making? So this is where we are right now. So I ask this question because there are similarities in meadow structure. The species composition is the same. Some of it can be intertidal, some of it can be subtidal. This is exposed during low tides. This is never exposed, always in the water. So the patterns or the characteristics of the seagrasses are similar for practically all the places in this bioregion. So I have a test site, 2 test sites in Malaysia to see if we can have a bottom-up approach to understanding this issue. So the first site is Pulau Tinggi Marine Park. Basically, Pulau means island in our language. So it is a marine protected area. So the seagrasses and the sediments are protected by legislation comparatively. Here, this is the Sungai Pulai estuary. So Sungai means river in our language. So this is actually a very highly anthropogenically influenced area where the seagrasses are influenced by port activities, vessel traffic, and recently through reclamation for urban modification of the environment. So the hypothesis that we asked was that are there higher carbon in an MPA meadow compared to a non-MPA meadow? So the MPA meadow would be this one, the non-MPA would be this one. So we use standard methods to quantify the sediment organic carbon stocks. We try to look at how much of the carbon is contributed by seagrasses per se. We use standard methods again by organic methods, stable isotope signatures. So this is what we got. So interestingly, we found that the estuary has higher carbon stocks compared to the island stocks. So in the standard methods, we use sediment cores to estimate the carbon. So we compartmentalized the cores to superficial versus deeper sediments, and in superficial sediments, the contribution by the seagrasses is only about 10% and slightly lower for deeper sediments. For those in the marine park, the bulk carbon is actually much lower than the ones in the non-MPA, but the proportion of the seagrass-derived carbon is actually higher. Now, you may ask, how is it that I have only 2 sites and I can generalize? If I can just put some take-home message here, is that seagrass carbon stocks in an MPA is not necessarily higher than in a non-MPA, and non-seagrass derived inputs assisted in contributing towards bulk organic carbon in the seagrass sediments. So how does this apply to understanding the question that I posed earlier? Ever since 2012, more and more seagrass studies have been occurring in this region, and the blue dots are the locations from my test sites. If I put it in comparison to all the other test sites, so this is actually the sum of what we got. All the averages are well below global estimates and well below the average of 50% seagrass-derived organic carbon in the sediments. So there are some overall pictures for Indo-Pacific seagrass meadows in relation to blue carbon. So generalizations on high capacity for carbon storage can be misleading. So there are carbon stocks in the Indo-Pacific region, but they are modest, to say the least. So in our group, we are trying to look at the actual hard science, the fundamental science, and how and why the mechanisms for carbon cycling and stabilization in seagrass sediments are not equivalent to global estimates. And what about policy directions then? I said earlier that the policy making is preempting the science. So this is some of the policy papers that have been published recently, and again they equate seagrasses and mangroves at the same level, and these are the 5-step mechanism whereby they translate the science all the way to policy making. But for seagrass meadows, it still can't go beyond number 2 for the Indo-Pacific region. I'm not saying it globally. Globally, it's a different picture. Temperate regions is a different picture. However, for the Indo-Pacific regions with seagrass meadows, this is where we still need to understand. And I also highlight that seagrasses are important, but more science is needed for more robust estimates, for the policy making to be more trustable in a sense. So with that, thank you for your very kind attention. Happy to take any questions if there's any. Thank you.
Fascinating, thank you very much. Just very quickly, I would again leave the prerogative of the chair and ask if seagrass represents a fairly small share of the organic carbon as you suggested, where does the rest come from? And also how permanent? You said it can be stored for a long time. How long?
Okay, so in temperate regions, it can go as long as thousands of years. It can be as long as short as 3,000, 5,000, up to 10,000 years. So the permanence is a big question for tropical then. For temperate is good, but tropical there seems to be a high cycling tendency. So we don't know why it's different. Could be the temperature. Okay. To your first question, if it's such a small proportion, yes, for the Indo-Pacific region, probably it's a small proportion, but we don't know what's the balance between the natural cycling of carbon, whether it's at a local level, which translates at a regional level, or it's applicable for the global level. So these are still pertinent questions that we are asking in terms of new carbon research.
Excellent, thank you very much. And we'll have a further discussion in the panel. So with that, let's give a big hand to the speaker. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is going to talk about smart villages, which is fantastic. Normally we listen only to smart cities. So smart villages towards sustainable development, and our next speaker is Rudolf Wiraban, and he is from Microsoft, Sydney, Australia. Rudolf, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elena. Thank you for coming, everyone. What I'm doing here is what I'm doing here is to show quite totally different perspective of how we solve the climate change. So all is actually based on that book, Transformation from Wall Street to Well-being. This is actually from Professor Jenner in Flinders University in Australia. So what we are doing is we try to see the climate change from a very different perspective. With this, we say, everything has to start from the ground, from the earth, from the rural area. And then we identify, the people, the farmer, everyone is actually, they have something to offer. And we identify the bamboos, the coffee, and the cassava to be used as the base of something else. That something else is IT. Because if you see in the area of the farming area, the price is reduced, a very, very, tiny price. So what we are trying to do is not the farmer going to sell the product or telling the people, hey, I have the product. So we through IT, we try to reverse the process, tell the buyer to come to the farmer and produce all the truck, the transport and everything to bring the product to outside. So this is how we build the smart village or the Kampung IT. Kampung is the Indonesian and Malaysia word for a village. So of course, we need to focus on the social, the economic, and the environmental. The social is always, very often if we start doing something together, people are always asking, what is for me? That is, I think, a big mistake. That's the reason why our world is going down. That's why also the pollution is starting. But we try to say, hey, how about what is for us instead of what is for me? So what I'm doing is not for me only, but also for other people. So I will consider other people as well. And the other one, the economy, is we are trying to empower it. Not to control it, but to empower. And the last one is, of course, all this is very nice, but how you know unless you monitor the system. If you cannot monitor the system, you just talk. Yeah? And then it's very often you see a lot of people switch out from the high level, from the government, from big business. They talk quite nicely, but actually in the reality, this is not very, very good. So we try to do all this together. How to do that? So we always have something from certain level, then we try to achieve to the next level. Of course, in this way, we are trying to achieve to get more resources so that we can grow. But this, as we all know, all resources is not that easy. It's always barrier. So sometimes we are getting something, even though we get the resource, even that resource create a burden to us. So that is true that we throw away. So as we presented in and of us. And if everything is going well, then we continue to proceed until we achieve this everything. And everything what we did is monitored, is reported, is the data collected, so that we can action, we can do something about it. Now, in life, we also can imagine this is like a labyrinth. You go there, you go around, a year, 10 years, you probably there's no coming out from the labyrinth. But if you have someone to guide you, they say you go to left, and right, you go straight way out. Okay, this is the life. You know, unfortunately, we make life much harder as it required. So again, you start with some concept, and then you go through the labyrinth, and you go out and see is it turning to the best or turning to the worst. If it's turning to the best, you continue. If it's turning to the worst, you throw away all the resources you already collected and give to other person. For example, you want to share knowledge. Then you say, hey, I want to become a teacher. So to become a teacher, you need certain knowledge. So you put into your basket whatever knowledge required. You go in, and then you start doing. You teach in the school, do whatever you have to do. And as you come out, you find, oh, it's very tiring to become a teacher. As I explain something, the student argue. I'm getting tired. So it's not very good. But I still want to share my knowledge. How do I do that? And then I say, hey, and I found that there's a possibility that to become someone that show you the show you how to what infrastructure, what environment in certain area. So there's a guidance for the tourist guidance. So it's also shared. So you have to learn probably English, you have to learn the location and so forth. You put into the basket, you go inside again, and then as you go out, suddenly you find you got a lot of tips from the people and say, hey, this is what I want, this is very good. So but what next? So from this tourism activity, there's a list of opportunity that you can open a restaurant, you can open a hotel, you can open a tourism bureau or whatever. Let's assume you choose the restaurant because you like to cook. And then there's another requirement, how to cook properly, cleanliness and all this kind of stuff. So you go inside again and until you succeed. This is the process. Along the way, all the data is recorded. How we recorded it? We use blockchains. The blockchain is a ledger, it's a visible ledger. You cannot cheat. Whatever you put in there, it is there. Because as soon as you put, it is distributed around the world. Yeah? This is how we manage this one to make sure that everything what we do is measurable and the truth. In math, we trust. Okay? Not in human anymore, unfortunately. So what we do, bamboos, cassava, coffee, and vortex for the energy. So bamboos, with bamboos, just bamboos, we have everything. We have food. The bamboo shoot is very good. We have a house, we have furniture. Even we have energy from bamboos, we can create electricity energy. So just with bamboos, you can actually satisfy whatever you need for your life. You do not need to cut the tree. The tree needs about 30 years to grow. Bamboos, 3 to 5 years. And bamboos is actually, it's a grass. You cut, it grow. You cut, it grow. Yeah? And this is sometimes become a burden. So you need to burn it, or turn it into electricity. Yeah? So coffee, to me, Vietnam coffee, this is my first time coming to Vietnam. The coffee is wonderful. So the coffee is the place we can actually bring people together. As a developer, you need a place, you need a light, you need the Wi-Fi. This is all provided by cafe. Okay? And then you can write a program there. You should not write a program in your house. You should go there because you can communicate with all the other person. Sometimes you have problem. And then somebody else hearing about the discussion and say, hey, it's quite easy. Just turn this way or do this way, it solves your problem. Okay? That is the beauty of togetherness, collaboration. And here in Vortex, this actually is the river. We don't need to need a big energy. If you have a river, you can actually guide the river, just the 1 meter drop, create a vortex, like you're washing your hand, you see the vortex. So you can put a machine to drive the electricity. Yeah? And the fish and all pass through because it's not big power. So the fish, they survive. There's no harm to the animal in the river. And cassava, very important. People talking about rubbish and all this. They're burdened about this kind of recycling the rubbish. Actually, the first place we should not generate the rubbish. Then we don't need to recycle. So the way we do not, even though we need plastic like that, we can get plastic from cassava. If you get plastic from cassava, you throw it on the ground, 3 months later it is gone. It becomes fertilizer. So it's no junk. So we don't need to recycle. The nature do it for us. So next is, this is how we actually generate electricity from bamboos, from the right. You chop the bamboos, you put into the container, you heat the container, it creates gas. And that gas actually produces all this electricity to be used. And that is what happened now. The farmer grow bamboo, supply bamboo, and generate power. And so this is recycled, and the farmer actually helping produce the electricity. Now coffee is good in Indonesia because we have the pin of Biến. We also have the ring of fire, but then I realized it's not only Indonesia is the best coffee, also Vietnam also have very good coffee. And this is how we run the workshop, Kampung IT, set up the Kampung IT, and that is how I teach the IT. IT is not start, you run left and right, so if you teach them, it will work quite well. And also the health, I do Tai Chi as well, so the people is healthy and also can do well. And what we have done in Indonesia, we got a award from the president as well. And at the end, we also plan to have Angklung here last night, but unfortunately we can't bring them into the country. But I would like in this opportunity to thank the people of Vietnam to invite our Angklung team to here. So hopefully hopefully next year we succeed, even though this year we are not successful. But the hope is still there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, excellent. And it's fantastic that everybody in this panel is extremely disciplined in keeping the time. So we do have just maybe 2 minutes if there are any questions or comments. Not right now, then I suggest that we go on because, well, there is one. Yes, if you keep it short and also the answer is kept short, yes.
Thanks a lot.
when you were rushing through your speech, you were talking about these programmers who will sit in the cafe and work together and have the problems to solve that and solve it together. Maybe you can explain a little better how the programmers relate to the farmers in order to make a smart village, or all the people in the village.
Thank you for that question. That's quite good. But listen, I haven't actually, I haven't actually talked very detailed what is bamboo related to this all IT stuff. The cafe need a building. Instead of building using the bricks, they build using bamboos. Okay, and then they can have a place to work and to produce whatever software development they need. And the farmer, very often, remember, I say, instead of the farmer selling something, the people that buying is coming to the farmer. How do they know? We create a marketplace. Who is doing that? The IT people. Helping the farmer to create a marketplace. Someone have, let's say, next week, I have 300 tons of probably corn. And so you put into the marketplace, and suddenly someone from somewhere else, South Vietnam or North Vietnam, or even from Indonesia, hey, I want to buy your product. So this guy is going there, bring all the transport, and buy the product, and export them themselves. It's not a burden of the farmer anymore. Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
With that, thank you very much for your talk and for the question and answer session. Okay, now we are flying back to the Red River Delta, and our next speaker is going to talk about developing action plans for climate change response at the district level in this region. So I would like to ask Truong Quan Bok to come and present his talk.
Distinguished Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the ECO group of the National University, it's a pleasure I'd like to present, summarize our reason entitled Study on Scientific and Practical Basis for Developing District Level Action Plans on Climate Change Adaptation in Red River Delta. It is a part of result of our sub-project entitled Climate Change Impact Assessment and Proposing Solutions for Adaptive Land Development carried out in France, Cameroon, in High Kong City, Namding and Thailand province for 2 years, 2015 and 2017. Carried out by the Center for Community Development within the bigger project Red River Delta Adaptive and use supported by UNICEF. My presentation consists of 4 points: introduction, study size, scope and results, result discussion, and contribution. As you know, in order to implement the national strategy on climate change and national target program on climate change response, the action plan on climate change response has been developed in Vietnam at 3 levels: national, ministerial, sectoral, and provincial. In order to raise effective list of implementation of the strategy and action plan, it is very necessary to develop action plans on climate change adaptation on district level. Objective of our task includes establish scientific and practical basis for developing action plan on climate change adaptation for district level, and more important, to guide local authority and community to develop action plan on climate change adaptation for their location. Study is carried out in 3 pilot sites in Red River Delta, namely Thailand Namding provinces and Hai Phong City, in 2 years, 2016 and 2017. This is the site study, Namding, Thailand and Hai Phong in coastal area of Red River Delta. combines bottom-up and top-down and participatory approach with the methods secondary data analysis, using appropriate method, including method for sociological research and ERA with the different tools. Especially, we apply the theory of social ecological system for the study. Thus, means this combination, the system is a combination of two systems, ecological and social system, focusing more on institution. With four properties, system health, adaptation, resilience, and vulnerability. This the picture of our work. This consideration is people. We very close working with local people, and it is a teamwork. Very important. I'd like to emphasize viewpoints for the developing the action plans. Consist the first one, involvement of stakeholders, especially local communities. The second one is implies with the national, sectoral, and local strategy, plan program, socio-economic development in short, medium, and long term. The third one, set clear priority for specific solutions and activities of each field, branch, and locality in responding to climate change. The next one is the integration of measures to adapt to climate change with other program projects of the locality. The next one is to ensure the feasibility of time, resources, and conditions for implementation, effectiveness, and offers. And the last one, to ensure the ability to respect, monitor, evaluate, and the implementation as well as the end of results. The process of action plan development consists of 8 steps. The first one is the preparation. The important point is establish a working group. I mean, the people committee of the district should set the working group. The head of the group is the vice chairman of the people committee, and member of the group consists of preparation of different units, important units of the district, such like agriculture and rural development, environment and natural resources, and planning, etc. The second point, very important, is to train the people, I mean the working group, on climate change and development of plan. And the last one, review of policy document concerned in each level. The second step is the assess the natural and socio-economic characteristics, which is also different for the local people. The third one is the process of situation of climate change and its impact. I mean, this determines the trend of climate events in the past, present, and future, and climate change impact and potential impact to foresee an area of the local location. The fourth is to assess resources and propose a solution for climate change. Includes the assess resilient based on resource analysis. Propose adaptation measure for sector area focusing on ecosystem-based solutions. And the fifth one, integration. I mean, mainstreaming climate change adaptation solutions into development plan, especially socio-economic development plan. And the sixth one is to identify priority project to implement the plan with the objective, content, priority levels, budget, and responsibility. And the last one is implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. This is some picture. This we train the local people of the working group in climate change and in development of plan. It is the consultation with the local authority and community. It is very important for us for the development of the plan. It is the reason. 3 action plan on climate change adaptation developed for 3 districts. Giao Thủy District, Nam Định Province, Cát Hải District, Hải Phòng City, and Tiền Hải District, Thái Bình Provinces. Especially all three action plans approved by the local authority and start to implement in the practice. It is announcing of decision approval of action plan in Tiền Hải District, Thái Bình Province. It is action plan. It is the summarize of action plan. It is all. It is I'm so sorry. It is in January. Yeah. What advantage for this action plan compared with other regions in Vietnam? I think this I like to emphasize 7 advantages. The first is for district level, the important level for implementation in Vietnam. That means it is between the central level and the national level. It is the first time in Vietnam we develop this action plan for the district level. The second one, having been rented by local authority and community, is the participation of different stakeholders. The third one, approach bottom-up, I like to emphasize bottom-up, has been based on community and top-down combination. The fourth one applies ecosystem-based adaptation. It is, I think, the view for Vietnam is applied first time in the district. The sixth one is integrating climate change adaptation user into socio-economic development. And besides, I like to emphasize, besides the action plan developed, I mean the capacity building for local people very clear. This, for example, we use ecosystem based approach for developing some model for aquaculture for the location. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much. So we have time for questions or comments. Not in this time, so perhaps we'll entertain questions or more comments later. And now, even though the program this would have been the last talk, but in fact we are going to have one more talk this morning because a person from the afternoon asked, the second session asked her talk to be shifted now because she has to leave. So I would like to announce Ms. Tram Phan, and she's going to talk about developing climate-smart agriculture in Vietnam's Central Highlands. Please come and deliver your talk. And you have 10 minutes.
Good morning, everyone. I am Trần from Institute of Human Geography and the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences. On behalf of our team, I would like to present my latest research on developing CSA in Vietnam's Central Highlands with a focus on diversity and local Philippines. Now, I would like to come straight to the point. Many researchers have pointed out the role of climate change in response to climate change in agriculture, especially in countries that are most prone to effects like Vietnam. CSA is an integrated approach that tackles 3 pillars of sustainable development, namely productivity, mitigation, and adaptation, and highly appreciated as a triple win solution. In Vietnam, our research shows to study CSA in Central Highlands with focus in Dallas City, Lâm Đồng province. This region has tremendous advantages for agricultural development, but its agriculture is suffer from climate change. And in that context, CSA is a strategic solution. Among local crops, a vegetable has a large area of farming applying high-tech CSA for about 35%. Thanks to support from government, CSA vegetable production has flourished with an annual average output 270 million Vietnam dollars per hectare. Remarkably, Việt Gap and Global Gap certified products yielded 1.7 billion Vietnam dollars in 2017. In order to examine CSA in this region, we selected and surveyed 2 CSA models in Dallas City, Lombok province to evaluate their efficiency in terms of productivity, adaptation, and mitigation. 2 models are Xuân Hương Cooperative and Thủy Canh Việt Agriculture Service or Cooperative established in 2013 and 2014 respectively. Both are vegetable producers on household scale and applying modern technology with 1,100 imported varieties and providing for domestic consumption. Some general information to cases of model source on the screen. And now I would like to show you the efficiency evaluation of these 2 models in terms of productivity. Here are the economic outcomes. It can be seen that both selected CSA models have better outcomes compared to conventional models. Besides, CSA products have a more stable consumption markets by contrast with supermarkets, restaurants, and manufacturing factories. In terms of efficiency, for one Vietnam đồng cost, Xuân Hương producers collect 1.63 Vietnam đồng revenue and 0.82 Vietnam đồng profit. Meanwhile, Thủy Canh Việt producers collect 1.92 Vietnam đồng revenue and 0.84 Vietnam đồng profit. The rest of profits over revenue are 32 and 44% respectively. It can be claimed within this research that both models selected have resulted in better outcomes compared to traditional production. Each model has its own advantages and disadvantages compared to others. You can see on the screen. However, it is noticed that economic efficiency of Thủy Canh Việt is higher than Xuân Hương. It can be explained by the difference in the technique applied. Xuân Hương applies land-based techniques with an automatic spray watering system. Thủy Canh Việt applies hydroponic techniques with the sensorial system, which is more advanced in terms of economizing land water, removing chemicals from production, and securing crop growth incompatible with their demands. In both models, crops are farmed in glass houses, which protect them from unfavorable weather phenomena like heavy rain, and from pestilent insects. All responders claim that there is almost no influence or interruption during farmer thanks to the glass house system. Besides, farmers have invested in modern facilities such as remote and sense real wisdom to control temperature and humidity, a film cover to prevent passive intrusion, insulating paint cover to cool down indoor temperature and utilize waterproofing effect. This also reduces the risk of loss and improve outcome quality, making farmers more proactive in production. Both models use automatic watering system, either dripping or spraying technique to provide water directly to plants with no excessive supply or evaporation. It also has reduced washout nutrients in soils and amount of water used. This indirectly reduces the greenhouse gases emission due to no use of chemicals as well as conserve the land and water resources. Also, vegetables are safe for both producers and consumers. There is no doubt about sustainable benefits that CSA has brought up for farmers in case of our research. In conclusion, we recommend that some points below should be taken into consideration in order to promote CSA practice. Firstly, financial difficulties must be solved to enable producers to modern technology in production. And secondly, it is important to raise the awareness about CSAs and provide training to improve capacity of labor force. Next, essential facilities must be prioritized for CSA and high-tech agricultural development. And last but not least, outcomes of scientific projects and researches must be transferred into practice. This also means that the linkages among farmers, scientists, and business must be secure and promoted for a more sustainable agriculture. That's all from the communication article. And I will be the first to put some comments for further discussion on the research. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Well, in time. Now, we have some time for panel discussion, even with this extra presentation. We don't have a panel up here yet, unfortunately, but I would like to ask all of our speakers this morning to occupy perhaps those chairs so that we can have our panel together, if that's okay. So please take your seats in that back row. Okay, in the front row. And my first question to the distinguished audience will be if they have any further questions or comments that they haven't had time to ask or make a comment during the talks. That will be the first part of our panel discussion. But while you are still thinking of your questions, then I would like to ask a question to each of our panelists this morning. If you think, just give one very succinct recommendation from your work to climate response action in Vietnam, so one for policy recommendation, and what would be from your work another recommendation for the research community? We are in TIයෙන් U. What do you think is the most important knowledge gap that should be addressed based on your work? Which is the next step forward so that that kind of work can go on and more adequate climate responses can be designed? So let's start, let's go one by one, and let's start at the end of this panel.
Okay, thank you very much. I think probably to not solve our problem, we solve their problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm sorry, just to come back to you. Can you help us relate how that will help climate change response?
Okay. I believe very often, for example, from the low-level point of view, or let's say the farmer point of view, they just want to survive. Okay? And how can they survive if we do not provide them with all the environment they already have for thousands and thousands of generations? In other words, we pollute the air, we pollute the river, and so on and so forth, even the food. So what we have to do is to reverse all these so that they can survive. Learn from the tree, learn from the plant, learn from the animal. They do not need policy. They do not need all the thinking. But they survive. How can they survive? Because they follow the nature, the harmony with the nature. And that's what we have to do. Just follow your heart. That's it. What do you choose?
Excellent. Thank you very much. Next.
Thank you. From my experience, I think, of course, there is a gap between the research and the policy maker. So the recommendation here could be that the policy makers just try to make use most of the science-based evidence, the climate change or the impact of climate change, and utilize the policy or the adaptation or response. But how to say, the researchers should provide the most useful information. Just not like just one only the scientific, but how to say, the more understandable information on the climate change. And also provide easy tools for the policymaker to understand the information and to make still information for them to make the policy.
Thank you very much. Next.
Thank you, Professor. I'll just put a very general statement here whereby I'm just saying the science needs to drive the policy. Okay? But can the policy wait for the science? So that's why in my presentation earlier, the policy is actually preemptive because it can't wait for the science, because the science is a robust process. But that robustness is needed for the policy to be good. So it's almost like a chicken and egg story now. So it becomes actually a dilemma. From where I come from, the science is important. Okay, and that's the bottom line where I see things. However, when it comes to the policy level, once the science is good, then it should be action-oriented, of course. So the science and the policy can be compatible. So the challenge right now is, again, to find the right balance between time to execute the research and time to implement good policies. So I think, in a general sense, that's where I look at things.
And what kind of research would be needed to establish a better evidence in a fast and cost-effective manner about the questions you raise? You raise very serious questions in your talk.
So it's a trade-off between good science versus mediocre science. You want good science, again, it's hard to say. Sometimes, the publication process, for instance, takes a long time. The research may have to go on first before the publication, but to justify the research, you can need the publication. So again, it's like, I don't know, it's hard to say the timeline. Again, as soon as possible, obviously. That's all I can feel.
But I was asking for what concrete research you think?
Sure. I guess any kind of action-oriented research is good. Right now, the science for the Indo-Pacific region, at least for where I get into carbon, we need to understand the actual biogeographical cycling and to see how that differs to other temperate regions. And in a sense, that's more directly applicable for our region rather than using global estimates or regional estimates from other regions, which will not be applicable to the 60% of the world.
And with the current capacities, how long do you think that will take for you to do it in a adequately robust manner?
The legwork has been done, basically. We have studied methods, we have a lot of policy direction. So, although the policy recommendations have been instituted already, we can actually sort of backtrack a bit to say, hey, slow down a bit. We can still feedback the science into the policy to make it more robust. So, the legwork has been done, so that has been more than 10 years in the making, I believe. So, even right now, the Blue Carbon report was out since 2009, so a lot of groundwork, a lot of preliminary research has been done. So, it doesn't take long more to get the methods, get more robust data to feed into the policy.
Thank you. Next.
In terms of the classification from my research, I think to have the countries prepare for the climate change, I think there should be three things needed. One thing is the technology, and then the second is the financing, and then certain policy. In fact, this research I just did yesterday was supported by the Korean government as part of the ODA project. So basically, yeah, we have technology still quite extensive, therefore, I think some international support for the many small development countries should be needed. And also, as you just made the comment, I think technological progress is quite important in terms of the cost of the installation of the renewable energies and so on. So there should be some concerted efforts from the different areas, technology and financing and
Thank you. Next.
Well, yeah, in line with the other previous panelists, I'd just like to have a quote. So I once heard somewhere, while I was in Germany, that data is not information, information is not knowledge, and knowledge is not wisdom. So we have the science there, all the modeling, all the data that we've gathered, observed data, but how we use it, how we analyze it, how we put it into our knowledge. It's to communicate between the scientists and the policymakers. That's the huge gap that we're facing right now. So that's my point of view on the current issue. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next one, please.
From my experience on our research, I think that for climate change response, I think we the knowledge gap about climate change, that means respond to climate change of farmers on local authorities. When we ask the knowledge of climate change, they say that they don't concern about the impact of climate change on their production, but they only concerned about the productivity. When we share about the climate change and
I'm very impressed by this CSA framework, and the speaker was able to demonstrate a very dramatic outcome. So I have very short two questions. The first is, what kind of IT technology you were able to integrate to this farming industry? And then the second question I'd like to have is, the first speaker also highlighted the importance of the capacity building. And usually this is very difficult with the farmers. And how were you able to educate those in line to those farmers with this new IT technology? Because I think the climate smart agriculture is a kind of new concept And the climate change is about to integrate a lot of this industry 4.0 component. And in that sense, I think this kind of experiment in that reason is really valuable. So if you don't mind, I want you to share those specific technologies and also the kind of the techniques, how you build this capacity building with the farmers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. It's a very beautiful question because see, there's a very big gap between the IT and the farmer. What actually we are thinking or what we are doing is like driving a car. In the past, only the engineer can drive a car. Remember? Now even my son, my daughter can drive a car automatically. Through all the development, everything is like a Lego. You just connect to each other. It just happens. Yeah? And you mentioned the Industry 4.0, and that is why we are here. In other words, see, if you want to build a marketplace or you want to sell something, you want to announce, you need a marketplace. So how you can do that? We got internet, we got web, but still you need a programmer to do that. Yeah? Of course, if you write in such a way that if you update the content, you need to write a program, especially PHP. It's very confusing, a lot of headache, time, and so on and so forth. Today, we have so-called portal. Portal is just a container. Container is doing nothing. It just presents something if something is there. On that container, you can put a small program called a kind of Lego. So you just drop the Lego there, and this just happened. Why? Because all the API or all the interface is meant based on certain condition. But we do not want to talk about the API. You just create an application, you drop it happens. So to write the small ends, I think all the IT people, if they know 2 + 2 is 4, I think they can write a program already. If you know if then else, to me, I think you know all the programming languages exist in the world. So very often people just focus on this small stuff. Mile wide and inch deep. That is the advice I can give. So in other words, we will provide advice, and then we teach people how to create a small program. So that if the portal is ready, so the farmer just announce they got a product, they got something. And this can be actually used by the contents creator. It's like writing a Microsoft Word. You type the data in. You don't even need to know how to be displayed on the screen. And suddenly, as soon as you push the button, it will display on the screen. But again, it's very dangerous. No? If you push something wrong, it is on the screen. So it will be a flow. Someone will actually, after they push that button, it goes to the next flow. The editor, the approver will test or make sure that the content is valid based on the policy. So in other words, you just use the tools, and then it happens. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and I would like to ask also Teacher Pan if you also would like to respond.
Thank you. And I think the way to for my research, I think we can raise through education for farmers and transferring techniques for farmers, especially we can show the farmers how to apply the new techniques for their production. I think that.
Excellent, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, but I encourage you to continue the discussions over the coffee break. And also, please remember that this is also our poster session. So when you grab your condiment and coffee or tea, please don't forget to visit the posters relevant to the session and talk to the presenters as well. And with that, let's give a hand to all of our speakers in this session. And please be back in time at 11 so that we have adequate time for the next speakers. And if you're a speaker, please do come in here a few minutes early. Thank you very much.
That's the first presentation of our chapter is by Dr. U BAN is not yet. So when I wait on the for our group.
Okay, thank you, Chairman, for a nice introduction. So, on behalf of our group research, I would like to introduce with you our research title is Management of Mangrove Forest for Enhancing Climate Change Response and Sustainability in Vietnam Cotton Zone. So, as you know that the mangrove would be plant which grow at the sea land boundary of subtropical region. You can see here almost the geographic distribution of mangrove is near continental, so that is very normal is a tropical area. So that the mangrove is very special plant that can grow in the very hot environment. Because of this environment normally very high in salinity and anaerobic condition. You see here they have so many mechanisms for adapt with this hot environment. Like they can develop some root system and different root systems so of the different species. So in this presentation we should emphasize that co-benefit of the adaptation and mitigation when we can conserve the special cotton ecosystem. Like when they adapt, we understand that the adaptation mangrove forest will provide many terms of adaptation, like provide fishery, productivity, medicine, tourism, or timber or biofuel for local people or local community. And in terms of mitigation, we emphasize on they can reduce impact from disaster and climate change, and also they can offset greenhouse gas emission. Means that when we can conserve this special cotton ecosystem, this will enhance climate change response and sustainability. In here, we emphasize on 6 sustainable development goals. Mangrove can fit with the first, second, 6, 13, 14, and 15. That's not enough, but we're missing that in case of Vietnam. So the first, how they can enhance the climate change response and sustainability, we want to emphasize about they can support livelihood and animal protein source for the cotton population. And same with the first sustainable development goal, mangrove can be important renewable resource for fuel construction or provide many kinds of chemical compound like cyanide and can provide paper dye and as a medicine for local community. And for second sustainable development goal, they mean zero hunger, so that we can mangrove forest can provide and maintain high productivity of the invertebrate and fish. In terms of the clean water and sanitation, mangrove forest located between the boundary of the land and marine environment, so that they can become the filter for pollution from the land to the sea. And about the sustainable goal climate action, mangrove very important. Now many local community or government already recognize that they can protect the village, city or agriculture and aquaculture from the tropical typhoon, flood, and particularly the tsunami. And they can sequester the carbon and offset the greenhouse gas emission a lot. So the last one the referrer for invertebrate and fish means that they can contribute for the life below the water. So for the first one in Vietnam, the mangrove normally can using for the important renewable resource. Many years, the mangrove forest in Vietnam have been exploited, cutting down for making the charcoal, and it can export to developed country or using in many technology for example, water cleaning system. And also, many local community in Vietnam based on the mangrove for using kind of the construction, house, building, and also furniture inside the housing. So also they can important medicine resource for many communities in the total area. Because when we organize many species of the mangrove, they can provide many special kind of the chemical compound I saw in here, kind of the one sonograph species, they can provide some special chemical compound can using for treatment the disease of the local community. And here maybe they can, for example, in Vietnam long time they using the tanning for neither preservation. In terms of the maintain high productivity of zero answer, mangrove can provide high productivity of invertebrate and fish for local community, increase the protein content in their meal, and also the reduce the we call the food security. Because normally the local community very poor, so they don't enough the economy for buying the nutrient, protein source, so that they need to buy on their source. And as you see here in Vietnam, one research have been reported that 1 hectare mangrove forest can support 450 kilogram per year of feed and invertebrate. This is very a lot for the local community because of it renewable every year. And here we also have a very good relationship between the how mangrove ecosystem degree and also degree of the capacity catching in mangrove area. And this is something that I saw in here, so that one day the local fishermen they come to the river and keep the net in the water, and then afternoon they can get a lot of fish. So that we emphasize this is very important. So mangrove also provide a filter for filtering of the pollutant from the land to sea. In terms of you see here, because the terrestrial contamination can transport from by river, by surface water, or by many ways, and before they can come to the marine environment. So mangrove can become the filter, and they make the pollutant keep inside the mangrove, and that makes our marine environment more cleaner. So that we on that. So for the most important now recognized from mangrove is they can protect the village and also the city agriculture. Because due to the root system and also the density of the plant, so they can reduce significantly the weight height and also speed. And you see here, we conduct some experiment area with no mangrove, the surf height of the sea wave very high, but with the not mangrove area maybe depend on the extent of the area. For example, at the 6 meter in wide of mangrove can reduce significantly the surf height. So that we show here is that will be very important in terms of protection. In another area, when you see here, so one CDI system in Vietnam, so that when we plant mangrove, so that the CDI is no problem during the typhoon, during the high wave, sea wave season. But in area with the mangrove, the significant erosion and destroy the life system. This means that if we invest to grow mangrove, they will have many benefits, and also they directly reduce the economic cost for building the infrastructure. So this is very important
of mangrove. And another, when some other study shows that if some area have natural mangrove, will have reduced the number of people dead during the disaster. For example, in here you can see if some area mangrove is very small, so that the number of death very high. But some other with the mangrove wide very large, so that the number of death reduced significantly. And about the tsunami, in Vietnam we don't have tsunami, but some other, like in India, Thailand, or some other country, Indonesia, they already have study about that. And you can see here, the area in the map shows that the area with mangrove shows that the damage is lower than other area without mangrove. So this is very important suggestion for some location vulnerable to the or potential happen of tsunami, and they can grow this kind of green mitigation system for the impact from the tsunami. About also this section we focus on the sequester of carbon and offsetting the greenhouse gas emission. And you know that since for many years we recognize the mangrove is important storage of the carbon for reduce greenhouse gas emission in the tropical or subtropical area. But since 2011, one research very important of the research team from United States, they report that in the Pacific, Asia Pacific mangrove in the Asia Pacific, they can store much the carbon storage in compared to the terrestrial forest. So since that time, many studies focus on evaluate how mangrove ecosystem in Vietnam can store about the carbon storage. For example, when we consider the carbon storage in both in terms of the above ground biomass and also in the binau. Binau means that is stored in the sediment below the forest. So in this figure, you show that we have similar pattern with the Asia Pacific Ocean area, and almost the carbon will be stored in the sediment. This is because the mangrove they grow in the boundary between the land and sea. They can store much carbon from river transport or land from terrestrial transport to the marine, and also the production from the above ground can also continuously store it in terms of the million years, so that they have very much high carbon storage. And also when we compare to other, for example, terrestrial forest, you can see this figure, you can see that the very 3 to 5 fold higher carbon store in mangrove. For example, in here I show in the many areas in the world, but in the Mekong Delta, for example, in our country, also in the medium higher in compared to the another mangrove, but significantly higher than the terrestrial forest. You can see here.
So just for clarification, do you mind just spelling the abbreviations, because I'm not sure you can understand all of them.
This is almost the Pacific, Asia Pacific Ocean, and this is the Mekong Delta in our study, and this is the terrestrial forest. Yeah. So in the when how mangrove can protect the life under the water, so you can see that the many studies already focus on improving our understanding how the mangrove can increase the biodiversity in the coastal area. Kind of the mangrove can provide many refuel for many species, can avoid the predator, they can have food also. For example, in here, some area without the mangrove, so that the predator can eat fish or eat the prey easier than the mangrove, because the mangrove they have some refuel for avoiding, and also they can quickly run away from the predator. So that increase kind of we call the biodiversity and the food web structure more longer. So and also when we study, we also know that mangrove also provide abundance of food resource. Now you see here many biogeochemical process happen from the above ground, and they can decompose in the sediment, surface floor, and then they can provide food for many types of food web cycle. So this is also maintained in the biodiversity in the mangrove ecosystem. So for the last need, we emphasize that mangrove is very important, can provide fit with the many sustainable development goals. So we provide in here some measures for enhance the resilience. So the importance of all of the function and also functioning of mangrove must depend on the resilience of ecosystem. So how we can increase it? Firstly we need to keep the biodiversity must be high. So that we need to have some policy or mechanism for conserving and protecting the biodiversity in terms of flora and fauna. And then we need to maintain the ecosystem function. This means that if we protect only biodiversity is not enough. We need to keep the natural functioning happen. For example, how water flow in, how water flow out, how the sediment can keep the elevation. For example, how they keep up with the sea level rise, or how the human impact cannot keep for mangrove can be natural growth. We mean that. And also we need to have mechanism for sustainable use of the ecosystem service, because we cannot have escape from it, because if we use it too much, and also if we use over capacity of the mangrove ecosystem service, so that they can degrade very quick. So this is our presentation, and we would like to share with you that the mangrove ecosystem in tropical area, especially in Vietnam, the most vulnerable country to climate change, is very important. So that we need to focus more about research, focus more about the policy and also the management. And also, important thing also that we need to go to the fund for research, go to the fund for replant, or and also reduce the impact from human activity to such an important ecosystem. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we are now the luxury of being able to entertain questions or comments. Well, until there are others, perhaps I would like to ask you, do you have any explanations as to why the carbon sequestration is so much higher in these mangroves than in terrestrial ones? And also, if you can comment a bit on the permanence, so how long will the carbon stay in the mangrove? Are there any studies how long they are taking the carbon out of the carbon cycle in a natural setting?
Okay, thank you very much for very interesting question. So, when the scientists recognize why the mangrove forest can store much carbon amount than terrestrial forest, because as I told that the previous night, I told that for the carbon storage inside the sediment, they need to favor condition for keeping in this. For example, this condition almost is anoxic condition, so that the carbon cannot be oxidized to the CO2, so that they can keep in many years. And also the sedimentation rate in the coastal area, so that they can very quick bury the carbon after they accumulate in the forest floor. About the turnover rate, as you mentioned, to now the very few research focus on that. But when people focus on it, how human impact on it, for example, aquaculture is the main factor. So that if the human activity change, for example, change mangrove and convert mangrove to the aquaculture, it very quickly release the CO2 to the atmosphere. But if we can keep in some kind of natural growth, so that we can keep the kind of 1,000 years or more than 1,000 years. So that it is no problem for. We should not worry about how they can turn over very quick. I kind of, for example, in the terrestrial forest, we worry about the turnover rate of the carbon, but in mangrove is a field research currently report about that. Yeah.
Thank you. And now you explained very well why the below ground carbon is higher because of the anoxic rates and so on. But we also see that often it seems that even the above ground carbon is larger. Is it are these more dense than terrestrial forests, or why is there any reason? Especially, I don't know what SU and YA stands for, but and also the CGBR, they also have very high rates of above ground carbon storage.
This depends because there are some Asia Pacific regions they conserve mangrove very good. For example, Indonesia or some Iceland country, so that they conserve mangrove very good, and the diameter of the tree very big, so that makes the background. And one other reason is the good density of the mangrove forest very high in compared to the terrestrial plant. So that makes the above ground higher than the terrestrial plant. And also the terrestrial forest, maybe they can create many types of forest. For example, new generation and too old generation. But in mangrove forest, maybe normally the concept very good. For example, some area in Malaysia, Indonesia, they can over 80 years old or 100 years old. So that the biomass very high. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Please.
Hello, I am
Please wait for the microphone and also please introduce yourself.
Thank you. I am Dang Wei. I'm from Master Program Climate Change and Development from Vietnam Japan University, and I want to ask a question about the mangrove and livelihood. Because as we know that the mangrove is located the area, coastal area, and its impact to the livelihood. Like if we have the policy to protect mangrove, so how people in that area can, maybe that's their livelihood, so maybe sometimes it's hard for them to change to other job. So now if you want to protect mangrove, so any recommend from you for like, we can protect and manage mangrove, but based on local community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Very interesting. So this is also the problem of the many policy makers already presented, and also in Vietnam happen too. For example, when we keep for mangrove in the conservation, the local community maybe cannot exploit the resource from the mangrove forest. So that the many economy model already developed for local community, firstly. And secondly, now we have also model for employ the natural resource under the forest. For example, we can provide for local community mechanism, the time and the period they can employ the resource in the mangrove forest. For doing that, so that the policy maker and also local community need to work together. We call the community-based management. So that the community will give the rule and give the comment and also the strategy for policy maker. So from that we can win up and also they can have sustainable use of the mangrove forest. So also in terms of that, livelihood of the from mangrove very important. So that we also in Vietnam have developed the strategy for we call the ecosystem-based adaptation. So from that, the local community can recognize the importance of mangrove and using the mangrove for more sustainable ways.
Well, let's make this a bit more perhaps provocative. So, do do you think that if people don't convert the mangrove to other livelihood ways of earning livelihood, will they be able to earn the same amount of people, the same livelihood from if we preserve mangroves?
In terms of that, because we worry about that, but normally the local community strongly depend on the mangrove. But in some way, when we have some conservation program and also some project for conserve the mangrove, we will find some new livelihood for local community also. So that is reduce the dependence of the local people on the ecosystem, so that they have some way for getting new livelihood besides the for example, previously depend on the 1 month, they depend on the 10 days, for example, go to mangrove and take the natural resource. But now if they have another strategy for livelihood, they can reduce to 5 days, for example, that, so that we can reduce the impact to the mangrove ecosystem and more sustainable way.
Thank you. There was one more question, and before we take that question, let me just ask you this more questions. But let me just ask, do we have Antoine in the room? No. So we only have one more presentation, right? Okay, so we can still take some time because there seems to be a lot of interest in mangroves, which are clearly a very important topic. So let's take now your question.
So my name is Ngọc from GIS, German Cooperation Agency, and I would like to give a question to the presenter about the ecosystem service. So it's very interesting to hear you mention about that, and I would like to hear also your opinion. Who will be the potential users of the ecosystem service of mangrove forest? And is there any suggestion from you that how can we enhance the use of that type of service?
Okay, thank you very much. When we're talking about the ecosystem service, that is mangrove can provide many services. Kind of the climate regulation, first need, water cleaning, for example, and also the direct service like provide the shellfish or fishery product. So that the direct ecosystem service can use it by local community. But some other indirect service, like kind of the protection from the die system, that may be direct and indirect service. But the government, for example, indirect is many stakeholders or other place can be protected by the mangrove. So that the many people, even from very far from mangrove, can be using that service. And also in terms of the environmental regulation and protection. So that many, for example, we are in the Hanoi now, mangrove is very far from our. But if the mangrove can protect and make the atmosphere more cleaner, so that we also using that. So for increase the ecosystem service, of course we need to many statutory and also policy for development and also utilization. For example, I think that many government and also the local level should be work together and also the clean up. And sometimes we need to indicate for people using, for example, some factory company, maybe if they emit more CO2, for example, that they can need to buy the quota or something from the service that. But for doing that, researchers need to implement it or carry out the calculate how much the ecosystem service of the one mangrove area can provide. For example, indirect or direct value. So that from that we can have statutory for using that service. So I think that's really a very big question. So we cannot fit all of the I hear it. So, okay. I hope that this question can make our understand a little bit about the ecosystem from mangrove ecosystem. One of very important, yesterday we see that the SK Foundation company, they already provide for many local community along the coast of Vietnam for zipline mangrove. That means that they support for service for local community, support for direct the company can contribute for society development. So this is my answer. Okay.
Thank you. We have, let's take the last question of this talk.
Hello, my name is Song Jung. I'm from SK Engineering Construction, and I really enjoy your talk today. I learned a lot about mangrove. It's quite interesting. One of my question is, in the beginning you mentioned about the mangrove is used as a construction material, if I understand you correctly. I wonder how good is it as a construction material? It's a small and specific question. What I mean is, it seems like, very not that strong construction material, but it seems to me, it is used quite, broadly in this area. So I wonder how good is it as a construction material?
When I mentioned about the construction from mangrove, material from mangrove, so that the different species will have different wood quality, but many species in the tropical area, like the rhizophora, we call the rhizophora, is very tall and the wood very hard and easy adapt with this very hard environment. For example, in Mekong Delta in Vietnam, the local community almost using, for example, we see this the house, they using almost the mangrove tree for building the house. This is very strange for us because we know that the mangrove is a protection in the forest of Vietnam. But the government and local government still keep for local community come to mangrove and they can select them some mangrove tree and bring back home for building the house. So that is the normal because for example you see here very far from urban area and so very difficult for building up by the cement or the modern construction material. So that this will provide for local community construction material for their building house. And also inside they have furniture, for example bed, table, chair, also they made in the mangrove wood. In here I show you for that, they can hold maybe 15 or 20 meters in height. So that the wood quality very good. So that they can easily stand in the very low land and also flat area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Let's give a hand to our speaker. And just for checking before we make mistakes, so we only have one more speaker left in the room. So with that, I would like to invite our second and last speaker for today, Duan, and he's going to talk about public-private partnership on disaster risk reduction and response to climate change, from theory to practice. Mr. Duan, the floor is yours. You can take 15 minutes if you want.
So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so I just want to follow the previous presentation because I can see a lot of linkage between my presentation and the previous one. And for my presentation, you can see there's a 3P, public-private partnership in disaster risk reduction and climate change response. In my presentation, I try to cover these key main things. The first one is conceptual framework.
The second one is about rationale, PPP. And the third one is key principle, PPP or DRs. And the fourth one is a strategic key activity measure for building public participation in disaster risk reduction. And the fifth, I want to share some practical experience from our project earlier implemented in Haiphong. And the last, I would like to discuss about the influencing factor, challenge, and ways ahead. So first of all, when we talk about the concept of PPP, and even this day you can see that even from the government, from media, talk a lot about BOT and about the bad thing with the construction, about road, about all these kind of things, and tax. But you can imagine that maybe PPP or just BOT has been mistranslated or translated in different ways. And here is one definition by World Bank. Actually, there is no standard international accepted definition of PPP. In terms of used to describe various type arrangement between public and private entity, and different countries have adopted different definitions of their PPP programs. But if you look at this example, you can see that PPP is still considered as something related to structural construction with hardware, not with software, something like responsible climate change. So why PPP is necessary? You can, in the earlier presentation, you have already come across with one consensus. That's private sector or small medium enterprise, even conglomerate like SK, have also been affected by climate change and disaster risk reduction. So in short, I would like to emphasize that private sector can be either victim or contribute to disaster risk and climate change risk. But so far, I think that's their inclusion in policy framework as well as in the daily implementation is still quite limited. So that's why the strong need for PPP, and especially for the urban area. So this photo I used from some other colleagues, and you can see this is something from Japan. It's you may remember about the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. It's very well known, and you can see that it's Sendai airport after tsunami earthquake in 2011. Yes, and you can see here about airport, about container. So actually, private sector or small medium enterprise have been very heavily affected by disaster risk and climate change. And here's some photo from neighboring countries. Thailand is a Dongmueang airport. Dongmueang is not a movie. And here you can see this also in 2011. And after this flooding, a lot of big companies from Japan, I think it's Japanese, Korea, they have changed their mind to migrate or to move to some other safer country. And here, very close to us, it's Vietnam. Have you been to Quảng Nam or Hội An? Just go down to the Cửu resort. You can see a lot of resort, and I think that's some big donor, private donor, and resort have never been put into the operation, and I think that's loss huge. So what is PPP principle? So in short, like to emphasize three things. The first one is a shared vision between public, private. The second one is shared interest, because when private sector we talk, we have to consider about interest. And the third one is a shared responsibility. And here are the several substantive key activity measures for building PPP in disaster risk reduction and climate change response. First one is raising awareness. The second one is policy framework. Because now if you look at even Vietnam or globally, I think that's maybe private sector have been mentioned somewhere, but it's not very clear. And the translation into practice is not easy. The next one is try to support the private sector with tangible things like business continuity planning. And the next one is improve supply chain resilience. Here are several other suggested activity like support private sector or SME with mitigation measure, because you can, as I mentioned earlier, private sector or SME can contribute a lot to the disaster risk and climate change. We have seen about Formosa, about Vedan, about a lot of destroyer earlier, yeah. And encourage and support private sector in building culture of corporate social responsibility. So I highly appreciate SK support for this event, because that's a very vivid and very interesting evidence about the CSR to respond to climate change in Vietnam. And the next one is formulation, propagation, implementation of pro-private sector SME policy, encouragement, compensation for the SME with good performance in the RC high country. Because you can imagine that SME more and more play important in development of Vietnam as well as sustainable development. But the government has also been trying a lot of development of policy to support, to encourage. But you can imagine one day maybe thousands of small and medium right was small. But I think that's how many have been bankrupt or something like that. And what's the role of this kind of policy? And here's some examples from our project. We have been implementing a project funded by Australian Department of Foreign Affairs from 2013 to 2017. And one component is to engage and building public-private partnership on disaster risk reduction. And here is our project site in 3 districts, Tiên Lãng, Cát Hải, and Ngo Quyền district. So we also have urban, peri-urban, and rural. And the project has been designed in response to UNISDR global initiative, making city resilient. My city is getting ready, which has been launched by UNISDR and Monre and Dunre Government of Vietnam in 2011. So for this component, building public PPP on DI and CR, we try to focus on 3 main pillars of component. The first one is awareness. Awareness here is not only for private sector but also for the government. And remember when we started the design phase and when we talked with the local authority in Haiphong about PPP, the concept of PPP, and they were very surprised to learn, oh, what is PPP? PPP means something, construction, road, but subsequently they change their mind. The second one is support for enforcement of policy for public-private partnership, because I have several policies have been developed at national level but hardly translated down to sub-national level. So you can imagine. The third one is promote SME CSR, corporate social responsibility. So through engagement process, small and medium enterprises see the importance of the cooperation with the local people, and they also contribute a lot for response to disaster, like fishing factory and hotel resorts. Here are some examples about the project activity. We can see from very small things like train the worker on fire extinguishing and contest for energy saving, a lot of things. And here is an initial achievement which came out from an external evaluation. The first one is the PPP has been introduced and practiced by local government agency and SME for the first time in project location in Haiphong City, not very far from here. The second one is government agency have become more capable and respected in looking to engage private sector, DRCCA, because one our observation that local authority usually come to the private sector or small SMEs, they usually have a different idea. Oh, this guy comes just for money or something like that, not come to have us. The next one is the capacity of local SME in tackling with disaster hazard and climate change basically has improved significantly. And the next one is CSR has been introduced project-wide. As a result, many SME have started contributing finance to support disaster affected in their neighborhoods. And chasing my project partner has started to improve knowledge of private sector, SME, strengthen DI is key to success. Keeping high motivation and participating SME is extremely important to maintain networking among local entrepreneurs. And selecting the right strategic partner from a range of government department and mass organization to facilitate SME network is also one of the important factors. Because you can imagine that with this PPP, it relates to different departments from planning, investment, to DONRE, to DAP, to industry, and working with private sector is required project management approach that is different from working with community-based DII and CCA. So I would like to close my presentation by highlight the influencing factor. The first one is Vietnam. It's very vulnerable to climate change. That's all. So PPP should be considered as one priority. The convention of the CCA in Vietnam so far mainly focus on rural context, because when we review all kind of policy as well as technical guidance, I think it's still quite a rural mindset. The next one is lack of sufficient policy and mechanism of technical guidance to stimulate is the private sector as well as the BI is the urban context. Yeah, it's the urban. So we talked about the urbanization, about its impact to climate change, but the next one is clear classification arrangement, interest and responsibility. Because when I talk about with private sector or SME, they usually talk about the interest first. And here I would like to just reintroduce a framework adopted by Asian Minister Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction about the resilient economy. So there are four main components. The first one is awareness generation. It's an awareness for also for local utility, for private sector, and for community. The second one is capacity development. The third one, regulation. The fourth one is incentive. But I would like to add one more component. It's moving another motivation. Motivation is much more important than this capacity development. Okay, that's all for my presentation. Thank you, and I'm ready for answer. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. So let's see if there are any questions or comments. Have you provoked any discussions, perhaps? How do you see public-private partnerships as an option in your area, in the protection of mangroves or responding to tech risk or whatever? We have seen a lot of work. So, yes, please.
Sorry for the second question, and because thank you for the presentation, and with a lot of information, I would like to ask more about disaster reduction. Because of our country, Vietnam, with the many typhoon, landslide from the highland or flood. So I would like to ask about disaster reduction. There is any challenger when we process the program for disaster reduction in Vietnam? And in your opinion, so which one is the most difficult challenger, like financial or technology or human source or like a cooperation from local community? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your very interesting and provocative question. So if you look at the arrangement, you can see that maybe our human beings have been facing with a lot of lessons never learned. So that's why we try to split between responding to climate change and disaster risk reduction. There should be some gray area in that. But in terms of institutional structure, you can see that we have Monterey, we have Mars taking care of disaster risk, and Monterey taking care of climate change. The same at global level, UNFCCC for climate change and UNSCR for disaster risk. What does it make sense? So from the question, I would like to emphasize that the most challenge for disaster risk reduction and also for response is the mindset.
Thank you. So very good idea about involve private sector in achieving SDG. So may you show any business opportunity for each role? For example,
yes.
Number 17 or 7 something. What business? Because private sector involvement should be through business mechanism.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. Yes, I missed this slide, and I want to emphasize more. If you look at the goal number 17, and if you look at this decision by Prime Minister of Vietnam, you can see very clearly that PPP should be there. But so far, I think that some ministries have already started to think about this. But you can imagine that with decisions 622 by Prime Minister of Vietnam, so in order to promote partnership, so this sub-objective 17.5 is encourage and promote public-private partnership in different kinds. But I would like to emphasize that public-private partnership should not be limited to structural measure of construction. This can be service, I mean that's like software for disaster reduction and response to climate change. Yeah, because so far like conventional disaster reduction, we only think about the structural measure, about construction, about dye, about dam. But you can imagine that those kind doesn't work. So that's why the government of Vietnam has to adopt the one program called this community-based disaster risk management or through decision 1002.
Thank you. Now you gave a definition for public-private partnership, and in that there was a strong component of assuming the risks. So what will be the motivation for the private sector to assume the risk? And you also mentioned motivation and incentives in several places of your talk. Can you make this a bit more tangible for us? What are the motivations, what are the incentives for the private sector to take over these risks?
Yeah, thank you very much for the very provocative and interesting question. Yes, motivation is very important. Why SK provide funding for this event? Now let's see. If we cannot explore the interest of the private sector, we will fail in engaging or mobilizing the private sector in responding to climate change and disaster risk before talking about the responsibility. So I think that's for example like leadership of SK. They have already aware about this kind of thing, and they think they see the difference in engaging in providing and support different country, different community in responding to climate change. Yeah, so I think that's the motivation here is that we should try to balance between the interest and responsibility. Thank you.
But would you be able to give a couple of examples, very concrete examples?
Okay.
Or even just public-private partnerships in the areas you work, even companies and how they could be more involved.
Yeah, I can give you some very concrete example from our project. Because at first, we as an NGO, when we approached small and medium enterprise, and small and medium enterprises were very surprised, and they don't want to receive us. Because they said, oh, you are an NGO guy, what is your business with us? But substantially, we try to engage them through the could see the interest like, for example, they can be supported with some kind of activity. They were provided with training on visiting, continuity planning, and substantially they see that is very important because their brand, their identity have also been substantially recognized by the local authority and other actors, and this somewhat affect to their productivity and their say. So that's why that's the way of engagement.
Thank you very much. Yes, please, one more question.
Hello, I'm from Vietnam Academy of Social Science, and I'm a little bit concerned about the policy aspect from your thoughts and experience. And following the previous questions, I wonder that when you mentioned about the public-private partnership, especially in the field of disaster risk reduction and response to climate change, so maybe the requirements or criteria for the private stakeholders could be different from those for another PPP in other fields. So, from your experience, should we have some special criteria or requirements for the private who should be and who could be that private stakeholders? And I'm a little bit curious about, in the case you study in Hanoi City, so how do local residents react to this PPP in disaster risk reduction? Because it seems like they are the ones who benefit from this partnership. And so I'm a little bit curious about their reactions or their awareness or attitude about this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So if I'm right, you have two specific questions. The first one is about the criteria for engaging or strategy for engaging in private sector. So as I mentioned earlier, for NGO like us, at first it was very difficult to engage with the private sector because private sector was actually usually they talk about interest first, what profit to bring to us. So then we have to use some kind of strategy, adapting strategies. We try to approach private sector as small enterprise through the moderating agency like BCCI, Union of Labor, SME Association, something like that. And about the targeting, there have been a lot of discussion about the targeting. What should be the criteria? And some of the very common things is SME at high risk disaster should be priority. People fly transportation on the sea, or like small and medium enterprise like fishing production, fish sauce production, and we have also come up with a list of criteria, and then this has been shared with the local partner and with SME, so that we could come up with a consensus. The second question is how the local people attitude towards PPP. As I mentioned earlier, I remember when we designed this project and we introduced the idea of PPP even to the vice chairman of PPC, they were very surprised because even I think that when they checked the list of inventory in the investment, they find PPP was not there for approval or something like that. But after discussing back and forth, so at first, the first constraint is the local authority level, they are aware and accepted for the new pilot. So then this went down to the lower level, to district, to commune, to one level. And the local people, I could see some very vivid example. That's the SME, when their awareness, the importance of engaging with the local community disaster risk reduction, they agreed to provide some very valid and very useful inputs, like support, contribute for building a swimming pool, and they try to change their technology, like cut fishing shots, so you can see. Because before that, local people living nearby this factory was all the time claiming about the production and the waste, but then when we was trying to create this kind of forum for dialogue, so they came up with the consensus and they apply this new mitigation technology, at least for the sourcing fish production. And I think that's in that sense, it's good that we try to engage in this kind of open forum dialogue, so we can see the participation from the local authority, private sector, and also community. And NGO like we play the role as a catalyst today. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much.
So continue the previous first question on mechanism.
Yes.
So may you propose any issues concerning harmony and balance, the benefit of all stakeholders to involve them in climate change response to the certain retain our mechanism, but here benefit, balance, harmony.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So you can imagine that when we talk about the sustainable development or sustainable business here, so in order to reach or to overreach to that level, I think that's a win-win solution should be ensured. So for example, local authority, what can they get from this PPP? Private sector, what can they get from this one? And community, what can they get from that? So I think that there has been a lot of opportunity for research and even for further study, and I think that's but the principle is a win-win. How to ensure in win-win. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any last questions or comments? Our secretaries are also allowed. But in that case, let's give a hand to our last speaker. Thank you very much. So we have a little time to summarize what we have done so far in this panel, and then perhaps you can let me take first stab at this with the fantastic help and facilitation of our excellent secretaries. But then I would be very interested. Okay, so why not you?
Present by what and we will copy. This is a very rough draft of summary. So input from you, I think, is more important. First, summarize that the best way, please. Yeah. So we will put your ideas, your proposals, recommendations, and when you see what to lose and miss, please input in. And they type directly on the screen. You can see what happened. Yeah, by this way. Yeah. So before starting, okay, please. Yeah. On behalf of our chair and the secretary, that Dr. Dan Vantra, make that the summary.
Well, that's a very great honor and huge responsibilities on the shoulders of a very young man as myself, but I take this very seriously. So, with the permission from the chair and Dr. Kotera, I'd like to briefly go through what we've been doing over the last couple hours. In our session of climate change response, we had a total of 12 presentations, in which 7 were presented in the first session, which were 15-minute block presentations, and 2 were presented in the second session. We have 3 poster presentations during the coffee break. So let's go through the important and innovative issues that we have in the first session. In the first presentation, which was carried out by myself on behalf of Professor Dr. Hướng, The authors linked climate change and the Sustainable Development Goals using a set of indicators as well as the Delphi method to determine the weight of each impact. In the second presentation, we have the authors, which I have to... So, my apologies, I came a bit unprepared. So for the second presentation from Mr. Kim, we had the optimization of renewable energy electrification system for the remote island of the Maldives. The third presentation, we provided a map forecasting dengue fever for a large-scale area a month before. In the fourth presentation, our colleague in Indonesia, we have carbon sequestration using seagrass. Fifth, we had smart villages trying to link IT and farming. The sixth presentation, we have a new guideline to develop a climate change adaptation action plan in Vietnam from Professor Chung. And with the final presentation, we had climate smart agriculture, improving climate change mitigation and adaptation. So if you remember, just a couple minutes back, we have the second session, which talked about mangrove forests providing climate change adaptations and mitigations co-benefits. Second presentation from our colleague about public-private partnership on disaster risk reduction. In terms of the poster presentation, we had the solution to open space, planning in the context of climate change, wisdom of local farmers to adaptation, to the drought agricultural production, and finally, adaptive capacity to salinity intrusion. So those are the very brief summary of what's happened during the presentations. During the panel discussion, so from all the presenters of the first session, we have. Right. So in terms of the panel discussion, we had right before the coffee break, we asked for the question. The panel raised the question: is that can policy wait for science? Normally, science is lagging behind policy. Policy comes from the fact that we need to act, but we don't have yet the science basis of how to act. So how then can we improve the speed of science production to try to drag science up to the speed of policy making? And within the same line, Mr. Kim also raised the problem about of how to respond to climate change. We need to address knowledge, finance, and as well as science. So in there, you can still see reflected in there, there's science in there. From our colleague Wirwan in Australia, we had the problem of why do we need to act, in a natural world, animals need not science or policy. They were well off by themselves. So we needed it anyway. So how then can we address this problem? Just basically leave the people be. Just leave them with their pristine environment. Don't try to damage it in the first place. And then bring in science and policy. And we of course have the quote I heard from Germany: data is not information, information is not knowledge, knowledge is not wisdom. There's a huge gap bringing all this together, and that's where human comes in. So there's a huge gap between science and policy. And so that sums up what we've been talking over the last 2 or 3 hours. I would like to hand back to our chair to conclude remarks, maybe?
Yes, thank you very much. And I wonder if any of you want to contribute anything, any important points that you learned from this. What was really new to you? What was the message that you were bringing out the storm when you're leaving from any of these presentations? Is there anything you want to add? And while you're thinking, I can give you some of mine. And some of them were not whole solutions. But I certainly found it extremely interesting, this dynamic between how to do good science in the area of policy urgency, when we need to act urgently, but we still need to produce the science, the robust science to underpin these decisions, but it takes time. It was also very interesting to discuss how to provide a framework for linking SDGs and climate change response, and how to measure it. On the other hand, how also not to only look at the synergies, but how to accommodate also the trade-offs. It requires further thinking. It was also very interesting to look at a concrete case of how renewable energy is really spreading, but how it is not yet always the most cost-effective solution, even in a remote island where fossil fuels have to be imported, and whether storage costs will decline enough to make this the most economic solution for the future. It was also very interesting, this dichotomy between bringing IT into farming, because it's a big point that farmers just want to survive and so on, but at the same time we are talking about the fourth industrial revolution and Industry 4.0 to be brought into this very natural and very basic way of life. Also, climate smart agriculture, it was very good to see that in the cases they are definitely already bringing benefits to the locals and higher rates of productivity. Also that we need to be able to plan for climate response at the district level also, and not only in these very higher levels, because actually the real action is at that level. So, in regard to public-private partnerships, it's important to everybody would benefit if we rely more on this concept of this management structure and their ample opportunity, and it's also very good to see that SMEs are also interested in being involved in this, so we definitely need to make this more wider adoption of this. And finally, we had a lot of discussion on the benefits of mangroves and ecosystem services for both adaptation and mitigation related to climate change response. So, any other important points that people want to make that you can take home from this panel? Well, if not, then I would like to pass the mic to my co-chair if he wants to sum up and make a couple of final words.
I think that that's a good summary, but better summary would be made another way. We put the solution for ozone degradation on the adaptation, mitigation, and then integration of adaptation mitigation. It's easier for us to act. Here we see each author. Okay, that's more or less static very well. But we need synthesis and summary of solution according to this logic. You can do it another way, but the climate change response until now by IPCC, we see adaptation, mitigation, and also integration. And also yesterday, also transforming society to adapt to mitigate. Between here, maybe we see 4 issues: adaptation, mitigation, integration, adaptation, and also transforming. That I think is the best way for us to follow. So by this way, please you can make any comment from this way. I think more synthesis way. Yeah. Otherwise, we list this way for the people could not link with A, B, C, D. They could not, because some A, B, C, D, something, they have overlap each other. Because but so we link them. That's my suggestion. And also about the conclusion wasn't very integrated. I think in terms of the public-private partnership, and plus involve all stakeholders, because during this we ask him not only private sector, as we say about the harmony, benefit, and balance benefit of all stakeholders. That means here it can adopt more widely than that, and so wider involves more all stakeholders by harmony, benefit, harmony, and balance. That is the way. One of our finding here, but the third one can put the other idea on this because yesterday you see Vice Minister Tan asked 3 key issues. The second issue is how to involve all stakeholders in climate change. And also we asked another issues how to transfer science technology from A to B, from the developed to developing, from institution A to B, something like that. Because otherwise the cost of technology so high, so developing countries would not use. So this issue concerning our topic, maybe starting from the one, you can put some more about this from the Vice Minister Montreal proposed yesterday. So you can put in this way, that one of the ways to involve stakeholders by, and also science technology development for this one for sustainability and security, and which or we can say should be low cost climate technology or subsidized from somewhere. So I think you can put some
Yes, definitely. Actually, most of the discussions were very much synergies, which is excellent. So definitely mangroves and I don't know. Well, we haven't heard. I think the presenter of uninspired agriculture is not here, right? No, because it would have been interesting. I wanted to understand a bit more what they mean by uninspired agriculture, whether it's only adaptation or whether it does it include mitigation as well. Since it's very important, agricultural practices are crucial for mitigation, and I think if I understand in Vietnam also agriculture is a very important source of emissions. So clearly climate smart agriculture integrates mitigation practices with adaptation, that would be extremely important. But we have not been able to find out so much. So maybe over the lunch break I will try to find out. Certainly bringing IT into farming can also do both services, but I believe that's perhaps a stronger synergy there with the SDGs. So there we are much more concerned about that rather than mitigation, so adaptation and SDG synergies. Yeah, I think
we see are very famous from the British. Michael, you can have any solution for climate change response from your as additional input to our panel.
Oh, Professor Michael, very good at putting a finger on somebody. I've not been able to be at the entire session because of the very interesting other sessions. But I would say that an issue that has come up on the tail of this one and in other sessions too, is the balance between mitigation and adaptation. And that's causing a lot of concern, especially in folks that I've talked to from Vietnam, but it seems so in developing countries in general, simply because of the division of financing that supports either mitigation or adaptation. And so I think addressing that issue is quite important for us in the HANOI Forum as well. I would also suggest that there are drivers of environmental change that are not wholly connected to climate change. They are related to climate change, but they are not independent. They are dependent on other things as well, such as urbanization and population change and cultural changes as well. And it's important to entrain to include those environmental changes and how we would mitigate those and adapt to those, as well as addressing the things that are directly related to climate change. In other words, environmental change is a very large, broad, and important topic. And a large part of it is due to climate change, a large part of it is also due to other processes. And we should not, actually, in my mind, separate them.
And it's certainly the challenge of this area that everything is so interconnected and it's very difficult. You cannot address them in isolation, and I think for that, for example, the dengue fever was, for example, a very good example that, again, it's hard to isolate just climate change because it's so complex, all these other aspects, the urbanization, the habitat loss, the changing in healthcare access and so on and so on, but at the same time, it's impossible to always address everything together. So that's certainly a challenge, how to still focus in this web of interconnectedness. That's certainly very important. So,
I think I can put very urgent and difficult issues, how to distinguish non-climate change and climate change impact. That in Vietnam, for example, biodiversity degraded. So how much too much impact on biodiversity impacted, and how much climate change? So I think we consider non-climate change impact and climate change. Similar here, how much climate change in environmental change, and the answer. So may we choose a way we respond to total impact, because we could not distinguish what part by climate change, what part by non-climate change. So until we could not distinguish the two, we can make solutions or respond to all bad environmental change.
So may I respond to that? Yeah, I agree, that's a very good approach. I think in response to Diana's comment about you need to focus still on issues related to climate change is true. And I think that's principally because the elephant in the room is climate change, and one that has not been addressed a lot is sea level change. Because climate change will bring a lot of changes to our weather patterns, and the timing of weather patterns, to the magnitude and frequency of weather patterns, rainfall, monsoons, typhoons, and so on. Those are all extensions of our current climate conditions. But sea level change is something that we've not experienced for about 8,000 years. Sea level change of the rapidity that we are likely to experience it soon. We've never experienced that as human beings. And that is in many respects an elephant in the room that is a reason for focusing on climate change as a driver of some of these wicked environmental problems.
So we, our first we would like to say is thank you so much for all presenters, both the first section, second section, all poster sections. And the second, based on our presentations, summaries, and abstracts, full text, poster presentation, and today comment discussion. We can see that some general solutions. Firstly, you have to base on better climate change assessment and projection. Here, we have some presenters say about better map of forecast, not only in younger, but in the last scale. So we analyze them. And just in basis, the second thing is science and technology development, that including that industrial revolution 4, that the second basis. And the third, the link trying to respond with achieving certain development goal, and also NLTC with certain development goal, or of course both security and security. And as a third, here we can see the more or less the approach. And also integration, climate change, adaptation and integration, and also considering that transforming capacity. Here, transform the internal system to adapt and create without breaking the structure of the system, and also transforming the challenges of the climate change into that meaning our idea about this one. And also after that, we use the third, the fifth, we have to base on the ecosystem. Here we enlarge the show about ecosystem based, and also this ecosystem or nature based adaptation and mitigation. The fifth most important is that harmony and balance benefits of all stakeholders to involve them into that climate change response and sustainability. That more than PPP partnership. I think analysis. This partnership is easy, but stakeholder will be not only private sector, that's also NGO, community, and also another academic community. So we have considered their benefit. This includes both economic, social, spiritual, tangible, so on, that benefit, not only money. So I think this our benefit here not only money. Okay, but some big companies they invest in the climate change as a social business company. It means they're not waiting is a so big money benefit, but also the respect from society, from the community, on the country. And I think that's more or less 6 general approaches for climate change response, for aiming at development goal and also security and sustainability. And then that detailed solution of adaptations, mitigations, even here they better in optimum renewable energy investigation in the remote island and the rural area where available photon wind energy, so on. And also they propose some seagrass, blue carbon management strategy, and also we look for providing adaptation and mitigation that more also urban planning, so on. It means here different solution on adaptation, mitigation, and also integration. Integration also mentioned about 6 approaches, and also here they put integration, climate change response adaptation mitigation by from here as mangrove forest rehabilitation or restoration, and also another way of the PPP in both climate adaptation and so on. And also here we see a lot of detailed solutions to adaptation, to climate adapt and mitigate climate change. So and here we can see very news as more or less integration about based on the climate change planning, climate change response at district level based on the social ecosystem assessment, and also climate smart agriculture. Also this we can see integration, and also we can see here a lot of integration on based on the nature, and also also have the specific on the urban area, coastal area, and so that we see that more than very shortly you see from the also. So you have any more comment, input into our summary? So if not, I think we make a lot to all, especially presenters and our secretary.